putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. You can call me Mr. the Disgruntled Millennial. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. But we are not free from Richard Spencer today, because we are going to listen to a little bit more audio from Roaming Millennial. We heard a lot of audio today. We heard a lot of audio from people who said that we should just be able to punch Nazis. Now, the counterpart would be, we should just be able to punch minorities, right? We should just be able to punch SJWs. We should be able to punch Antifa. We should be able to punch anyone we want. We should be able to punch anyone that we don't disagree with. Now, you would think that with all this hatred and rage towards white people, this hatred and rage towards American society, towards Western civilization, would be channeled in another way. After all, it's the white people who are the violent ones. Oh, but if we have to meet the violence of whiteness with more violence, well, then that's okay. We could just go around punching people. Now, we heard audio from Cynthia G, this YouTuber who is just so full of hatred and rage towards white people, calls them caca devils. Devils. Does Richard Spencer go around calling black people N-words and devils and all this stuff? Is this rage against white people justified by some sort of, is Richard Spencer calling for genocide? Why is it okay for Black Lives Matter to demand 5 states where black people can go and white people are not welcome? Segregation. Why is it okay for them but not okay for Richard Spencer? That's what I'd like to know. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Why is it okay for SJWs to go around punching Nazis if you can just label anyone a Nazi, but it's not okay for a Nazi to punch back? If a Nazi punches back, he's just proving he's a Nazi. He's just proving that he deserved to get punched. I hate racism in all its forms, but what I hate even more than that is hypocrisy. Because racism is something that takes place in your heart. Being a racist doesn't necessarily mean you're a violent person. But this hypocrisy is projected onto all of us, and it's getting more and more violent. Now, Richard Spencer explicitly says in this next clip that he thinks that all races should have the right to self-determination and to be preserved. I am sure that social justice warriors would be just fine if all white people were gone. Just the idea, just the concept of whiteness. They want the entire idea of whiteness to go away. Not just white people, the idea of white people. All right, let's hear a little bit more from Roaming Millennial and the raving lunatic. The Nazi raving lunatic, Richard Spencer. Remember, this is the person who lefties don't even want to hear out before they punch him.
Would that be the reason why you're in favor of the segregation, the fact that racial differences lead to cultural differences? Because I think a lot of people, when they hear something like what you're advocating for, they might say, well, if you're not a white supremacist and you don't think these other races are inferior, why would you not want to live with them? Because, just for me personally, there are many groups I would not want to live next to, and quite frankly, it is because I don't like them. I don't want to live next to radical Islamists. I don't want to live next to people who play EDM at 2 a.m. in the morning, stuff like that. So I guess for you, would it be because of the link between race and culture?
Yes, absolutely. That maybe electronic dance music aside, yes, that this is the foundation of those cultural differences or religious differences that we recognize. There are 2 elements to this. I think there's a conservative element and there's an idealistic element. So I do think that races deserve to be conserved. And this was actually a lot of American racialist thought, like Madison Grant or Lothrop Stoddard. They were conservationists in that sense. And they were actually environmental conservationists, but they're also racial conservationists. So they wanted to save the spotted owl, but they also wanted to save Nordic America. And I think there is something to that. I do want to live in a planet where there are Africans, and I want to live in a planet where there are American Indians. I think that they have a culture that I don't want to see lost. And I think a lot of white people are like that, where we have a certain respect for, say, the American Indian, that even though we won, even though we dominated those people, that we don't hate them, and we think that they're worthy of being conserved. I think that is absolutely true. But I also have you could say a kind of idealistic or Faustian notion to this, in the sense that white man we've been attempting very avidly to overcome race for decades now, certainly since the Second World War, but it actually goes back further. We've been attempting to reform schools, to integrate neighborhoods, to regularize educational and employment outcomes. We've worried about the self-esteem of African Americans or Muslims. We've worried about whether immigrants are going to be fully integrated into our culture. We've spent trillions upon trillions of dollars in terms of policy attempting these perhaps noble ends. We've spent trillions and trillions of dollars effectively running away from diversity. Whites have something that I think is actually a terrible waste of money. We have abandoned so many of our great cities and built new ones in the suburbs, new ones that are kind of hollow and don't have that character and history that the old ones have. So we've spent trillions on this project. Imagine if we had channeled that money and terraformed Mars, or explored the rings of Saturn, or created a magnetic levitation train system that would allow us to travel from Washington, D.C. to Seattle in 3.5 hours. I mean, and this sounds like sci-fi. Ooh, that's so crazy. You've watched Stanley Kubrick too much or whatever. No, I haven't. All of those things are I have, but all of those things are absolutely possible, and they're possible if we will them. And so I feel like we need a paradigmatic change where we start channeling our energies, channeling our money to these truly great projects, and that we give up this siren song of racial equality and integration.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what I hear from that. I don't even hear a strong support for segregation. I don't hear him saying we need to segregate. What I hear him saying is we need to not shove it down people's throats by force. That we need to not redistribute wealth for the purpose of making other people feel good. We need to let it happen naturally. We need to let it happen more organically. What I definitely don't hear him saying is kill the blacks, kill the Indians, kill the Muslims, kill everyone except for Whitey. Do you hear him saying that? I don't hear him saying that. What I do hear is this Aquila lady who we just heard a little while ago saying, always punch a Nazi. It's an ethical thing to do. This is the same lady who says that there should be less white people in the world. That is called genocide. You know, for all the talk about fairness and diversity and equality, it's a real wonder to me why more people don't call out these social justice warriors for the genocidal maniacs that they are. They want less white people. How do you plan to achieve that, SJWs? Do you think we're just supposed to kill ourselves? Do you think we're just supposed to commit mass suicide? Is that what you want? I bet you a lot of you do. Richard Spencer doesn't want you to commit mass suicide. And you call him the Nazi. Now, on a completely different subject, most SJWs categorically hate the state of Israel. They can't stand the idea that Jews have a right to self-determination in the Middle East. Who is the Nazi again? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. All those weird chants that basically say kill all the Jews. Who is the real Nazi? I'm going to blow your mind right now. I like Richard Spencer. From what I've seen, from what I've heard, from the things that I've heard him say, I like the guy. I don't mind him so much. I disagree with some of his fundamental premises. I think it has a hell of a lot to do more with culture than with race. But he's a guy I would want to sit down and talk to and have a fiery debate with, because you know what? I know that he's not out there advocating for genocide. I know that he's not out there advocating for gas chambers for Jews. He's not out there advocating to put black people back in chains. He doesn't even say that he's not even claiming that white people are like the superior race. white supremacist. Again, leftist language is so disgusting. They cheapen the meaning of the word. They cheapen the meanings of the words that they use. I would like to have lunch with Richard Spencer one day. I would like to pick his brain. I'd like to understand where the guy is coming from because I'm interested in dialogue. These people who talk about diversity just make me sick to my stomach because they don't really care about diversity. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. This is Kevin Jackson Radio. We will be right back. Get me at Shaq General.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.